it's really interesting for me, this conversation. I mean, it strikes me that I can't remember that I ever engaged in a struggle for reconciliation. And I can't think that I've met anybody in this country who was involved in the fight against fascism who articulated that as a struggle for reconciliation. It struck me, this obvious thing struck me the other day, and I wondered where the devil it had come from. Whose conversation was this? And because, of course, it came from Mandela, there's a kind of a notional sort of hallowedness about this conversation. It had to be right because it came from Mandela. He was blessed with some sort of wisdom beyond our own. I think we must get rid of this kind of thinking because it enables nothing. And I take your point about honesty in that very spirit. It enables nothing. But I'm not allowed to make a speech. I must ask a question. If I'm to accept, and I really endorse the view that blacks have reconciled with poverty, and so on. If I'm to accept that this is so, and I reflect on the questions that Fani, you asked, well, perhaps you didn't ask it as a question. You said, imagine a TRC, which would have resulted in, inter alia, a process of legislating against the perpetrators, acting against the perpetrators. You put all of those things. You said, we in fact have let this process down. Well, I want to assure you that I've let no process down. And I would suggest that the greater majority of the people in this country have not let that process down. A whole lot of us, when talking about the greater population of the country, found itself in a position where it was entirely dispossessed of its own power as a civil society, as a society that had an articulacy. And in fact, it was made to understand that these things were quite beyond it. I'm getting to the point that these things were precisely as a result of a set of political agenda. You had this problem and you had to deal with the problem. You couldn't just ignore the problem. So you established structures that put this problem into a box and enabled you to never, ever actually deal with it. So that we've got this disparity is a result of the absence of a political will. This country is organized in the particular way in which it is organized in order that those who have privilege can continue to have privilege. Nothing has been done to address that. The TRC is but one example of a process, and I don't mean any disrespect to any of the individuals who are involved in that process, but an example of a process which enabled a very important matter to be sanitized and boxed. So we are very, very far from any form of reconciliation. But I'd really like to understand what the devil I'm supposed to reconcile with. I can't waste too much time having a conversation about white Lebensangst. I can't really do that. I really have to get on with the business of transforming the society into a decent place for decent human beings. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is David Robert Lewis. I'm an anti-apartheid activist. I've worked for several banned publications during the struggle. I've also worked for a person who was working for head of ordnance at Umkhonto weSizwe. Couple of things that just go through my head. The one is I didn't join a struggle for real estate. It's about the color of one's rights, not about the color of one's skin. 6 months ago, I launched an application at the Equality Court, naming the Minister of Justice as the first respondent and the second respondent, a very well-known Afrikaner, Broederbond, supremacist media company. And the reason I'm suing the Minister of Justice has got to do precisely with his failure to defend the TRC report before the courts of this country. If people are familiar with the Act, the enabling legislation which created the Commission of Inquiry into Gross Violations under Apartheid, one of the things that comes out of that Act is the phrase non-repetition of error. The reason why we created a commission was to prevent the repetition of the past. And I'm holding the minister accountable. I'm seeking assurances of non-repetition of the violations of human rights. Issues such as newsroom segregation, separate facilities in 2006 at NUSPACE. And I'm suing NUSPACE where I'm in a situation where I myself do not have an attorney in a case affecting the life of the Truth and Reconciliation, the final report. Where I myself am facing attacks by the president of the Cape Law Society, who seems to be a person who doesn't think I deserve a legal identity, and that I shouldn't be defended when I'm attacked by persons insinuating that I should belong to a certain race group, or that I should comply with a certain race identity, or that I should occupy a certain supremacist, privileged headspace, bearing in mind that I'm a person that broke that taboo back in the 80s. I had a girlfriend who was had to walk on the other side of the road. I've been attacked by members of the AWB. I've been assaulted by Afrikaner grannies. I've been attacked by people who were protecting white privilege, precisely that privilege that I was opposed to. And here I sit, 20 years later. I've just read an affidavit this morning by a white supremacist by the name of Colin Kahanowitz, a member of the advocates profession, who believes that none of this happened. Apartheid never happened. I myself was not involved in the struggle. I've made some grandiose statements to do with my association with Mohamed Rafiq Rohan and the late Zwelakhe Sisulu. So I'm going to leave it at that. And just a question to the panel. What are you people doing to assist and to facilitate the kind of litigation, civil litigation, public litigation that I'm involved in right now?
My name is Muawiyah Khalid, and I'm involved in education. There are two issues that I want to raise. The one is, what kind of apartheid were people prepared to get rid of? Because I think there were different layers, and even amongst blacks, we were inspiring for that apartheid to stay in shape so that we can benefit from it. And one can sense the Model C school people, how they speak, because they didn't want to go to the township schools and go to that higher, because the notion of reconciliation is to find a middle ground from the extreme top and the extreme bottom. But a lot of us didn't want to be prepared to be in that middle road, because we want to aspire to the top. And in terms of education, my take is that if a vote comes down and see what we do, you will hug us, because we're exactly doing the same thing. That the success of education at the moment is location based. So wherever you live, and if you are happy and have the means to move yourself out of those locations, you can get a better education. The second point that I want to just ask is, are we attaching too much apartheid to color? To what extent are black people believing in the notions away from the color line about the apartheid system? And we have people like Gatsha Buthelezi in Parliament who were part of the Bantustans and the homelands, and we have a very short memory on what happened. And so to what extent are we allowing even our leaders to conveniently play apartheid only in terms of color, but instead of not highlighting the class debate that we are silent about in South Africa, that we can pay HODs or DGs in government 1.8 million rand per year, and even communists in our parliaments would say, well, they qualify for the 1.2 million cars they can drive. So to what extent do we move beyond the color debate and start raising the class debate?
Thank you very much. My name is Isaiah. I'm from the Civil Society of Congolese. I'm the Secretary General for the civil society. I have just one question to ask the panel. What they expect as a result when they talk about the reconciliation among community and society or mankind, what they really expect to see or to change, or what they've done so far by talking about reconciliation. Because according to my view, I can give a simple example, like reconciliation to like those 4 glasses have all the same level. And what is done really? That's my question. Thank you very much.